Guys, cross our fingers, but if it doesn't work, I can record it at home and we'll be good. Okay. So you all have, you'll need the walkthrough tool, the Amplify walkthrough tool, the note catcher, and you will need, sorry, y'all, the action step coach guide. And we can go, we'll pause and so you guys can get that. That's also linked in that agenda for the other 2 days, or today and yesterday. All right, so once you have all of that, Brandon, I feel like I can move a little bit so that you can see. Okay.
It's in the link that we're in right now.
Yeah, you know what? I would just say right now.
I had hard copies of them because I made it.
Yeah, I think we, go into that agenda here. It's in everything should be linked in that 2-day agenda that yesterday you were taking notes in.
Oh, right here.
And so, so when you go in, there'll be like a walkthrough tool link, coaching action step guide. And so again, you can just drag it to the tab. So then you have it there so you can easily find it. All right.
Okay, action step coaching guide.
You got that. Yeah.
And you said drag it.
You drag it to the Cali tab.
I don't know if it went.
You got it? I know it's the mouse pad that got me off too when you first, but then all of a sudden you start like, it's almost hard to go back.
Does it have to be right touching your name?
I know. Okay. We're going to move into, so we're going to complete the professional learning session for Amplify. And then what we'll do is schedule when we want to do Eureka. Okay. Quickly, if you look at my screen right here, learning agreements, there's a lot going on. What do you want to hold yourself to just for this 60 minutes of time, knowing there's so many things that pull you out in the day?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're fine.
Probably experiencing some discomfort because I know that I don't know everything, so just kind of making sure that my mind
sit in the discomfort a little.
Yeah.
Yeah. Strive toward personal awareness, reflection. I think that one's perfect. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So, introduction. So we're going to go ahead and get started. You guys have all your stuff. But before we go, you're going to have 1 minute to answer one of the questions on the slide.
Okay.
I want you to be prepared to tell us the answer. So the question is...
So do I go on the slide deck?
No, don't worry about that.
Don't worry about
that.
that.
Just me. You just look right in here. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, just to take... So then you don't have to worry about it.
Okay.
And then just have your note catcher in front.
Okay.
We're doing the Amplify observation PD from TEA. Yeah, right now. Yeah. What's it? Oh, here, I got you. There you go. Yeah, you got it. Yeah. All right. So 1 minute. The question, you can answer one question. So it says, what was the last TV show you watched or movie? What is something you love that everyone else dislikes? What's your dream vacation destination? What would be 30 more seconds to answer or to figure out which one? Just one, you can answer one thing. You don't have to answer all.
Got it.
Brandon, you want to start?
Sure. So the TV show that I just currently watched
Ooh,
is
yes.
Monsters, the Menendez brothers story
Oh,
on Netflix.
I haven't watched it yet.
Very interesting.
Dark.
Kind of dark. Kind of like, okay, what's fact and what's fiction in this? Kind of.
Yeah.
So that was intriguing. And if I could answer another one,
Yes. Yeah.
what's something that you love that apparently everybody else does not? Did not know this, but most of the staff here does not like banana Laffy Taffies, and I love banana Laffy Taffies.
Yeah, we both do.
So, but so many people
What?
like.
I love banana Laffy
Yeah,
Taffy
so we
too.
took all of
Are we
it.
like a rare commodity here?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
I didn't either. I thought everybody loved banana.
I feel like
Laffy
everybody else is
Taffies.
really missing out.
I feel
You know, like shame on them.
So, yeah, those are my two. That
I love.
Shocker.
The last movie I watched, me and my husband, I think it was The Bad Boys. And we didn't think that it would be good, but
No.
it's actually really good because when they keep continuing movies, you just don't know. But it was actually really good.
Oh, that's good.
And books the same. We went in Miss Young's room and we got all the bananas, just assuming nobody else likes them. But I love black jelly beans.
You know what?
My dad
That's a
would
line
never-
that I can't cross.
I
Okay.
love the taste
No.
of black jelly beans.
You are the one that everybody needs though, because like when there's
acquired
it's all
taste.
left out,
Yeah.
like you can grab
Mhm.
them. All right. I had my first son when I was really young, like right out of college, and I didn't get to travel a lot because then I just started having kids. I have 3. So I always have dreams of traveling, faraway places. And Japan has always been a place. I don't know why I think it's just so far away and different that I've always wanted to experience it. But that would be, or somewhere warm. But like, I don't know, it just is so unique. Yeah.
We have a teacher, Miss Jenkins, who just got back from Japan. She went there over the summer. So you can have
Yeah, I'm going to have
ask her how
to
her experience was.
find her. And
Mhm.
all right. So today in this session, you're going to use your observation and feedback protocol. You're going to observe and record a teacher delivering in the Amplify lesson. You're going to identify and discuss success and opportunities for growth in the lesson based on the Coach Action Guide, which we kind of are ahead because we did what we did yesterday. Yeah, and then we will set goals at the end later today. We'll set goals for specific teachers that we really want to focus on, and then plan out an arc of interaction. Like, what does that look like between all of us, right? The touch points, like the walkthrough, the protocols you want to use for internalizing, the coaching, all of that. So we'll go into that in a second. Okay. So today we're going to root our work in a teacher experience, a Texas teacher. But I want to first highlight that we'll be centering our work today around, obviously, feedback and observation tool. So what you're going to do is I want us to take a minute and review the feedback and observation tool for Amplify. We want to make sure that we take a deeper dive into how teachers can implement the products to effectively meet the needs of their kids. You guys are already ahead in this part. I already cross-referenced this phase 2 of looking at the walkthrough tool and the ones that you added to this for phase 2. Yeah. And the one that I thought that was left out, which is interesting off this one, is all students are active participants in key lessons within the key components. So we'll discuss, when Brittany comes, we'll discuss more about, are these the right ones for out of the walkthrough tool based on our walkthroughs? Is there one we want to even prioritize in here across the school? And so we'll do that. So go ahead and make sure you have that open. And just quickly review that walkthrough tool doc. Oh, good job, Nikki. Yeah.
I have the hard copy of it, but is it in the
Yeah. So we'll go into that, back into that agenda from,
yeah, I'm in there.
and then where it says walkthrough tool. Let me know if you need help too. Because that one is the Eureka.
And you want the Amplify, and I have them both.
Yeah. Oh, and then there you go.
Yeah,
Just
'cause
go ahead and look over it.
Okay. I want to link it to your tab. I got it.
Okay. What I want you to now identify is which indicators are the easiest for you to rate. Like it's clear every time. And then I'm also going to ask you which indicator in the walkthrough tool is most challenging to rate and why. And I'll take notes.
So we just go.
Yeah, go ahead and shut it out. So Mika, go ahead.
So one of the first ones that's easy is just recognizing that teacher has lesson material ready and established and key components, routines. It's kind of easy to measure.
Okay.
One of the difficult ones sometimes is lesson meets minimum number of minutes for core instruction.
Why? Yeah, just like go deeper a little bit. Why is that like tough for you when you know to determine or to measure?
Well, with the number, so when they're like for their warm up, we met and we determined that you don't have to do every single frequency. Sometimes when a kid is stuck and the teacher goes back to check for understanding, just making sure that's plugged in. We've seen a few teachers that a kid was stuck on something and we know that was a 3-minute block. But do we go ahead and extend that time to before we move on to make sure that understand exactly? So not so much being hard to know that this is the minutes that Amplified or Eureka has put in here, but where do you add those pausing points to make sure you stay on pace, but don't leave that block knowing that 4 kids are raising their head with confusion.
That is a good one. That like these circumstances.
Yeah, those pausing points. Yeah.
Brandon, what's yours?
For me, one of the easiest ones is knowing if the lesson objectives are shared with students orally or written. Because I mean, you always look for it written, but you always should check with the student, like, what are you guys learning about today? So to me, that's an easy practice to know if the kids know what they're working on.
Right.
Of course, having material ready, that's an easy one.
For you, which one would be the tougher one?
The toughest one to me, I look towards optional activities, including the lesson, that are purposeful in supporting all students learning at grade level appropriate. So for me, the reason that was more difficult is because you're talking about optional activities, and when you're in the moment coaching, it's like, is the teacher aligning those activities to where they are grade level, but also scaffolding it correctly for the student. So it's a lot of things kind of coming together in that moment that you got to kind of know about that student to know if that's an effective practice in the classroom.
Oh yeah, that's good. And that, I think, just to address both of you, you know, some of the tougher ones, thinking about what you're putting in place of teachers utilizing the protocol, but they're annotating.
Yeah.
So then Ms. Simmons can go in and see what the intentionality is around the materials or the pacing to see why maybe they're extending one part and shortening another. But it should be like a map, right? They're writing it out, so then you can see it happen. But they do that with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what we're striving to do, is like understand clarity with love it. Yeah. Okay, so now that we had a chance to review this tool, we're going to dive deeper into what you might see in the classroom of teachers who need supports. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to watch an example of implementation of an Amplify literacy program. And we're going to first, though, we're going to view the video But as you watch, what I want you to do is create a table and teacher and student. I want you to script things that you're seeing. So then when we're going to norm using the walkthrough tool, we can have that low hanging notes right there for you to use when we're norming. Okay, so go ahead and like make a table on your note catcher. If it's easier for you to like handwrite, do
I've
it.
always been a screw-
Yeah.
Then you do that. Whatever you guys need. Like,
Okay.
it must be typed. No.
This way, you want some black paper?
And then I'm gonna base it off of this. Two things.
What's this called? This print is called?
600, something 600.
Hold on 1 second, I got you.
Remember 600.
This printer is Kyocera Task ALFA 600 412.
Okay. I got the one.
That's a lot. Task Alpha.
I
Yeah.
got
Task Alpha.
5052.
That's that's this building right here.
Now we'll know where to do it.
Not right now. No, we're waiting
So
on
I'm
some
not
time.
gonna- Okay, thank you. Protect your time.
Okay.
Make sure that you cancel the ones there.
So I'm going to really quickly click on this video link so we can. Now this is like crocheting underwater right now. Here we go. Share this tab instead. I'm going to turn up the volume.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay, so low hanging notes, like what is the teacher doing? What are the students doing? Because then we're going to bring it together to like just look at evidence for these indicators. Okay. This is a good example because we didn't dive into the lesson actually. So it's like if you go in and you don't have the lesson, what do you see if all you have is the walkthrough tool? There most of the time though, I'm going to strive to like have when we watch videos, we'll look at the lesson first and then watch the video. But I think they're doing this intentionally so that a lot of times if you haven't looked at the lesson before you just walk in, what can you see is my gathering.
Okay.
All right, you ready? Sorry, guys.
Today. So I'm going to be reading through our lesson. This is the time where I need you sitting and listening to what I'm saying because we're going to be reading for the next 20 minutes. I'll stop a couple times and I'll ask you to respond to some things. Are y'all ready?
Yeah.
Eyes on the screen or eyes on me? So, we learned last time about the Louisiana Purchase when the United States government purchased the Louisiana Territory from France. Once the purchase of the Louisiana Territory was complete, President Thomas Jefferson wanted to send explorers to make maps of this new land to learn more about it. So here's what he said. The two big rivers meet at St. Louis, so you could start the trip along the Missouri River here. Perhaps the Missouri flows all the way to the Pacific Ocean, or if it doesn't, maybe it connects to other rivers that will help you reach the Pacific Ocean. You can find out for a second. He wanted them to collect plant and animal samples. And then, third, you must also become friends with the Native Americans you meet. You will want to bring along presents for them so that they know you come to offer peace. I have a challenging question for you. Why do you think Thomas Jefferson thought it was important for Lois and Clark to make peace? So I want you to listen. I'm going to repeat it again. I want you to think, and then we're going to turn and talk. Go.
I think he wanted. Yeah, I think Daniel Boone made them mad.
What do y'all think?
Know each other better.
Say it again.
We said they will get to know each other better.
Get to know each other better. Do you think they have a good relationship with the Native Americans right now? Why?
Because they can triple their
Yeah, they started taking their land. So right now they're not having the best relationship. And so he's like, make sure you're being nice. Bring them gifts to show them that you come in peace. You're not here to take their lands. Very good answer, girls. That's right. All right.
A bad relationship.
It's not that great because remember our pilgrims in Plymouth Rock, we came over here, the Europeans came and they're like, hey, we don't really know how to grow things on our own or hunt things on our own. Could you help us out? And they did. And then they sat down for a feast. We call that feast what? Okay. And then what happens? More Europeans keep coming and push them out of their family lands. So they're like, wait a minute, we helped you when you got here and now you're kicking us out? I would say that's not a very good relationship. So Thomas Jefferson thought it was very important that they come offering peace and not trying to take their lands because the relationship wasn't that good and they really needed to work on that. So let's move on. Okay. This is Lewis, Meriwether Lewis, writing his letter back to Thomas Jefferson. When Meriwether Lewis received the president's letter,
We're going to do something a little different. Now we're actually going to, I'm actually going to have you look at the lesson. We're just going to rewatch this part, and I want to see any differences with the experience that you just felt right now without the lesson, and you just walked in. And then now we're going to look at the lesson and see how your critical eye would be a little bit different.
Okay.
Now that you know what his North Star is. So I texted you the link. Can you guys get text on your computers? Oh, sorry. I thought on my Mac, I get. Oh, well, Simmons, that's the whole point of getting a Mac. You could have your text right here. Okay, so what I want you all to do is I want you to scroll to so lesson 5. And I once you get to lesson 5, I want you to get to the read aloud really quick.
Read aloud or introduction to read
Um,
Basically.
Lewis and Clark. That's lesson 5.
yeah.
Okay.
So,
Introducing the read over.
So just a voiceover. Primary focus. Students will review events leading up to Louisiana Purchase. Reading, students will explain the reasons that Lewis and Clark went on their expedition. Like, why did they go? Language, students will demonstrate understanding of Tier 2 word brave and Tier 3 word route. The formative assessment is map the route. Students will draw a map of their route to school, write about the things they see. However, so the read aloud, it's 30 minutes, whole group. Students have a flip book, the teacher does. So it should be purpose for listening, Lewis and Clark, comprehension questions, and then they focus on the word brave. So just look at the read aloud, introduction. I want you to pay attention to the embedded supports on the right hand column of that lesson. So if this teacher had ELL students, secondary language learners, or if they wanted to increase the language going on, what would be a beginner prompt we'd want to see the teacher do from the embedded supports?
The recalling of words.
Yeah.
And phrases related to Daniel Boone.
Yeah, like going over like words like co-captain.
What would be his check for understanding?
The pausing and the call and response, repeating.
Go down a little, go to the second page, page 70 on the doc. It says check for understanding and it says recall. What is he going to be listening for?
It says, how did the United States get the Louisiana Territory? And this is what he should be hearing. When Monroe met with Napoleon about buying the city of New Orleans, Napoleon also wanted to sell Louisiana Territory to the United States. So the United States bought the city of New Orleans and the Louisiana Territory. So that's what you should be hearing when you're asking. So that should be the question you're asking and what you're hearing.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so let's scroll down to the read aloud itself. So we want to hear the purpose, right? And that goes with the walkthrough tool. And that was one of the ones, Brandon, I think you pointed out it was tough for you to like, did they share the objective with the students? This is something we want to hear. 15 minutes. We have these images of Louisiana Purchase.
I'm reading it.
Right. Yeah.
Because that would be additional support.
Be fascinating, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then we go into Meriwether Lewis, Lewis and Clark's, their path. Then we go into another check for understanding, right after the projected path, the map. What would the check for understanding there be?
That one is, what were the 3 reasons Jefferson wanted Lewis and Clark to explore the Louisiana Territory?
Yeah.
So you want to hear that, the reasons.
Yeah.
2 reasons.
Yeah. And like, I love if you even keep going, you may want to make a list on the board for chart paper, like chart that. Right. Yeah. Like that additional support. In my mind, that could be an embedded support as well for them to refer to, rather than having to memorize and go back to.
And see, that would be exciting. It says, find out if there is a water route. Kids like that. Is there water they have to cross?
Yeah, exactly. Then we keep going down with the images, and then we have an additional support. What do they feel like could get in the way of understanding this image of William Clark, that you need these additional support possible?
Like you're talking about the co-captain.
Yes.
Like just knowing what that means.
What does co mean?
Yeah, what does that mean? Is that
right.
the leader? You could even use. So we have another teacher in here that is called our fellows.
Exactly.
Do real life.
And then if you scroll down, then after we go through these images, right? Then we have the comprehension questions. So we have literal and inferential, but making sure that he shows the map while asking those questions, in my mind, seems pretty vital. Like, you don't have the map memorized in your brain, like, and then on the left, before you get to the word brave from your MLLs, that additional support. And I would some of these supports are good for all kids. So if a teacher's like, I don't have any MLLs in my classroom, well, but could this actually be a great scaffold for students that are struggling to comprehend independently? So we have sentence frames for intermediate.
I just had something.
No, we have oral word banks, new territory. So supporting students with those language resources.
You know what? Before I lose the thought,
Do it.
We were talking about the exit ticket.
Yeah.
For, skills, and they could use all the check for understandings.
Yeah.
They give you 3 or 4 in one, because I think some of the teachers were strictly pulling comprehensive questions. I'm sorry.
I love this. This is great. This is great. And so then we have 5 minutes at the end. So 10 minutes of comprehension questions, then 5 minutes of the word brave. And then we move into application. But we're only strictly looking at the read aloud. So now you're going to watch this video again, and you can use this lesson. Yeah. So if you want to even add, or I love, like, some of you did a line and you're going to redo it. What be some things that is missing or too much of or lacking? Okay, so we're going to do this again. Okay, ready?
Today. So I'm going to be reading through our lesson. This is the time where I need you sitting and listening to what I'm saying, because we're going to be reading for the next 20 minutes. I'll stop a couple times and I'll ask you to respond to some things. Are y'all ready?
Yeah.
Eyes on the screen or eyes on me? So, we learned last time about the Louisiana Purchase when the United States government purchased the Louisiana Territory from France. Once the purchase of the Louisiana Territory was complete, President Thomas Jefferson wanted to send explorers to make maps of this new land to learn more about it. So here's what he said. The two big rivers meet at St. Louis, so you could start the trip along the Missouri River here. Perhaps the Missouri flows all the way to the Pacific Ocean, or if it doesn't, maybe it connects to other rivers that will help you reach the Pacific Ocean. You can find out for a second. He wanted them to collect plant and animal samples. And then, third, you must also become friends with the Native Americans you meet. You will want to bring along presents for them so that they know you come to offer peace. I have a challenging question for you. Why do you think Thomas Jefferson thought it was important for Lois and Clark to make peace? So I want you to listen. I'm going to repeat it again. I want you to think, and then we're going to turn and talk. Go.
I think he wanted. Yeah, I think Daniel Boone made them
What are y'all
know each other better.
Say it again.
We said they will get to know each other better.
Get to know each other better. Do you think they have a good relationship with the Native Americans right now? Why?
Because they can triple their stuff.
Yeah, they started taking their land. So right now they're not having the best relationship. And so he's like, make sure you're being nice. Bring them gifts to show them that you come in peace. You're not here to take their lands. Very good answer, girls. That's right. All right.
A bad relationship.
It's not that great because remember our pilgrims in Plymouth Rock, we came over here, the Europeans came and they're like, hey, we don't really know how to grow things on our own or hunt things on our own. Could you help us out? And they did. And then they sat down for a feast. We call that feast what? Okay. And then what happens? More Europeans keep coming and push them out of their family lands. So they're like, wait a minute, we helped you when you got here and now you're kicking us out? I would say that's not a very good relationship. So Thomas Jefferson thought it was very important that they come offering peace and not trying to take their lands because the relationship wasn't that good and they really needed to work on that. So let's move on. Okay. This is Lewis, Meriwether Lewis, writing his letter back to Thomas Jefferson. When Meriwether Lewis received the president's letter, he was very excited. However, he was a very thoughtful man. He wrote back, I'm very honored that you've asked me to do this, Mr. President, and I will do my very best for you. However,
What was the check for understanding that we were supposed to see in that lesson right there before he went into Lewis?
The 3 reasons.
Yes. So just make sure you make a note. There was no CFU.
Mhm.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I captured that part. Okay, here we go.
I will need to ask a friend of mine, William Clark, to help me complete these tasks with your permission. So, let's look at this person. We learned Meriwether Lewis. This is William Clark. Can y'all say William Clark?
William Clark.
So that's why this chapter is called Lois and Clark, because we have William Clark and Meriwether Lewis. And those are the people that Thomas Jefferson chose to go out on this expedition. He chose those two people to explore that Louisiana Purchase. Okay, so William Clark and I became great friends. This is Meriwether Lewis writing the letter to Thomas Jefferson. When we served together in the Army, he and I work well together. Clark is very good at drawing maps, identifying plants and animals, and he has lots of experience with the Native Americans. Wow, that was 3 things that sound a lot like what Thomas Jefferson was asking. So, he's good at drawing maps. Why would that be important?
Because he knows how to draw, so people know what they'll need.
If they are exploring these new lands, it would be nice to have a map for the other people to explore, right?
Yeah.
I can't imagine me driving anywhere without my Google Maps. So, I mean, I would not be good at exploring new lands, I'll tell you that. All right, and also identifying plants and animals. That is something that Thomas Jefferson wanted them to do as well as making friends with the Native Americans. So he writes to Thomas Jefferson, I would feel much more certain that we could do the things you ask if William Clark could accompany me as co-captain. Now, co-captain, that word co, that prefix co, means with. So he wants to be captains with. Does that mean he wants Lewis to work for Clark or Clark to work for Lewis? No, they're going to work together. They're going to be co-captains. They're working with each other. We talk about that word in class, or a different word using the prefix co. Do y'all remember me talking about cooperating?
Yeah.
What does cooperating mean? Elena?
Cooperating means doing what you like said to do.
Doing what I said to do. Yeah, we're getting there. We're close, Jada.
It means control your body
Feet and arms.
and do as you're supposed to.
Oh, we're getting a little off. Remember that word co means with? Well, operate means work. So when I ask y'all to cooperate, what am I asking you to do?
To work together.
To work together, to work with each other. All right. So as Lois and Clark started to prepare to start their journey, they didn't know what dangers or wonders they were about to face together. And they didn't know that this would make their relationship even stronger. Can you imagine exploring these new lands? Can you imagine how dangerous that could be? Going somewhere where you don't know if there's a waterfall, a polar bear, or a gorilla. So I want you to think, what dangers and wonders do you think Lois and Clark will find on their expedition? I'm going to let y'all turn and talk. Ready? Go.
I think they will find a tiger.
You think they're going to find a tiger in the Louisiana territory?
Oh yeah, I think they're gonna find these.
What do you think they're going to find, Giovanni? Huh? A waterfall? I bet they do find a lot of waterfalls because they're going along that river. That would be something that I would think you could find, okay? So we're talking about Lois and Clark and what they're going to find on their expedition. What do you think they might find in that Louisiana territory?
A bear.
All right, continue. Tell them a couple more things.
I think they're gonna find a jungle.
A jungle? Yeah, that would make sense.
A panda. They might find a
All right. 5, 4, 3, legs, 2, 1, and 0. Okay, so I heard some really good answers, and I think some of y'all were really paying attention to our habitats unit because I heard some really good answers like bobcat that we studied. I heard bears. I heard waterfalls. If they're traveling along a river, a waterfall might be something that you would run into, right? All right, so when I think of this, I just think about how crazy it would be to explore a land that nobody knows. Like, to me, that's just kind of like shocking, and I wouldn't even know where to start. You'd probably have to have good skills like building fires, hunting food, gathering certain plants, knowing what plants not to touch, right? Because there's a lot of dangerous plants too, right? All right, so we're going to stop right here. We'll pick up on part 2 tomorrow. I'm sorry, on Monday. All right? So this is a 2-part lesson. This was part 1. We'll pick up on part 2 next time. But first, I want to kind of review some of these questions. I want to see what you heard, what you were listening to, and now what you're able to respond with. So I'm going to be handing out tickets. I want to see you sitting tall,
Sorry, guys.
answering in complete.
All right, so we are at 9 minutes and 21 seconds. Just FYI.
Sentences. Are you ready?
Yeah.
When you speak, I want you to speak clear, so you need to show me I'm thinking or I'm ready to answer. The first question is, why did Thomas Jefferson want someone to explore the Louisiana Territory? Let's go with Max.
Because they wanted them to check if they had like they wanted to check if they had enough space.
Well, you're right. He wanted them to learn more about it. He didn't really know what was there, so he just wanted them to check it out, right? That's what an expedition is. You're going to check something out. So I like.
All right. So that is, go ahead, and now what I want you to do is I'm going to get on the right tab here. Okay. Okay. So now we're going to debrief what we saw. But before we do that, I want you to think about, the indicators on the walkthrough tool. Because at the end we're going to use the action step guide. We need to norm ourselves on that tool. But right now I want you to write what were, 3 glows, 3 grows, and wonderings that you have from what you saw in connection to the lesson.
Okay. Just no takeover on the tour.
Yeah.
Or
Whatever.
just-
Whatever. However you want to do it.
Let me just do it on the two. I have a lot of them, but you just wanted 3 and 3.
Yeah, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to go with the glows and grows. Then we're going to norm around the walkthrough tool.
Okay.
I want you to know there's no right answer with the walkthrough tool. It's just how we want to deem yes, no, partially, not observed. And then we're going to dive into the action step guide and really land on like, and Mika, this would be really for you, is what would be the action step based on kind of what we kind of amplify from our discussion. But this isn't on you. This is a collective discussion. But just for you to think about when you go into different classrooms, how to use that guide. Okay. So I'm going to take notes. You guys go ahead and just shout out your glows. We'll do 1-1. Brandon, you want to do one?
Okay.
Sure. So a glow for me was using the visuals provided by Amplify.
Mm-hmm. And then if you were going to say using the materials, just make sure that you add in like why, what does it do for kids?
And a goal for me, he did use some MRS strategies. He could have used more. The turn and talk, that tended to be his favorite one.
So he utilized the turn and talk too. And then why would that, like, if you were going to say, great job using the MRE strategy, specifically the turn and talk, what would be your next?
I saw a place where you could have plugged in a whip around, because with the turn and talk, you don't really know that everybody.
Oh no, I saw that.
It's time for that, but it's time to also.
What I meant, I should have said this better. What I meant is, what did the turn and talk do, rather than him? Like, what did it do for kids? Their experience.
The kids engaging.
Right. Yeah. Just like, I saw the turn and talk. It seemed to really increase engagement for all students, rather than like this popcorn.
Right.
Yeah. Good. Brandon?
Was effective use of using scaffolding with the prefix co. And the reason that is important is because it allowed your students to link the two together.
Good. Yeah. Good.
Yeah,
and I love the feedback, because then you turned it into how it impacts students, because then it takes away the compliance component of this whole conversation and feedback, rather than like, we want you to be compliant and a robot. It's like, no, look at the impact from you using these embedded supports. Mika, anything for you?
And I did the prefix as well, and that was background knowledge. Is something that they learned in the previous lesson. And he goes, remember, prefix, something coming before. I thought that was good to add.
Yeah, and so then like, exactly, how did that impact kids by referring back to the previous lesson or building background?
Right.
Yeah, perfect. Anything else you guys want to name?
So these are still glows, right?
Yeah.
Let me see. Those were my.
He did some call and response.
Mm-hmm.
which I like.
All right, let's go to grows.
Oh, wait a minute. One thing that I did notice.
Yeah, I love it.
He did stop for the CFUs when we followed the lesson, because before we looked at the lesson, when we just looked at him teaching, I didn't have that on there, but I noticed he did use the pausing points. He just didn't have a time with them.
Did you actually hear him use the CFUs though?
I did.
Like in the moment?
When he asked the question, he used one. He used number 2. When he checked for understanding in the reading, he had asked them. What is it in the notes? It was question 2. Oh, why did Thomas Jefferson want someone to explore Louisiana territory?
Yeah.
He did. So I noticed that he would stop and he asked. Now, I didn't know the time. It was supposed to be 10 minutes, but it seems like he picked the one that he wanted and he kind of stayed on that one.
That's interesting. Which could be a grow, Okay, yeah, let's go with grows then.
Okay.
Now, I want you to think about the read aloud's objective. Like, what do we want kids to walk away knowing? We want kids walking away knowing, I'll just voice over, that finding out, right, who will explore the Louisiana Territory and what their tasks will be. That's like the purpose for listening, but it says students will explain the reasons that Lewis and Clark went on their expedition. Okay. All right, grow. So anchor, thinking about that was the purpose. And I love that you just brought up, like, what were the questions that he did ask? Did it align to, were they the right questions to ask for that outcome? Students leaving knowing those things.
So the first rule for me that was extremely obvious, that you don't even have to, the read aloud was supposed to take 30 minutes. It took us 10.
Mm-hmm.
So number one, that is that right there shows a pacing issue.
Yeah, he skipped some parts, didn't he?
Yeah, he skipped
Like 5A2, that image of Jefferson musing on the possibilities.
He did, and he did a lot of the heavy lifting. I noticed that when he read, he
Mm,
kind of went off to his background knowledge, like his experience, and you can lose students. He
Right.
just kind of kept going, and then he said, "Okay, we're going to end." It wasn't a follow up. So now I'm going to give you an example of in time where
yeah.
I had to be a partner or something.
Think
I just
about,
noticed he rambled.
to your point, go back to when he pointed out the co.
Yeah.
He said co means with. Then he asked the question, what, he asked the question from the embedded supports, but did he, in that moment, he actually told them and then moved on?
Right.
To your point, Mika. So he's asking the question, but he's not facilitating them to do the cognitive thinking. Love that.
That would have been a perfect time to do a short constructive. If you fit that in there, kind of right. What age group is this? This is
grade 1.
Yeah.
So what else did you notice from the lessons?
What
you observed.
One thing I wrote down and noticed is that I'm not sure how well he internalized, especially when it comes to your check for understanding questions.
Yes.
Because when he checked in with the 2 groups that he checked, like he didn't even check in with everyone.
Yeah.
But he allowed, like they were talking about tigers and things like that, and he didn't have his exemplar where he could guide them in the right direction to be able to answer the questions.
Yeah.
So that for me was a big one.
Yep.
And maybe having the room set up in the groups at that point where your scholars, your higher group, they could do that turn and talk more, but hitting that lower group to make sure that the understanding is there, and then backtrack.
Yeah.
Hit that group and go back. So yeah, I noticed that he stayed in one area.
Yeah.
But yeah, he needs that exemplar to be able to guide.
The CFU was not, I didn't even hear what were the 3 reasons Jefferson wanted Lewis and Clark to explore the Louisiana Territory. And think about that question. If students can't answer that during a CFU, will they walk away knowing the objective? And so thinking about how important it is for these intentional CFUs in these moments. And then Mika, I love how you kind of jumped to the strategy on how to increase engagement with grouping, and how does he truly check for understanding, rather than just kind of like randomly listening. Yeah. Okay. Any other grows? Yes. Keep going.
I wonder if he actually did anything with the introduction to read aloud. He didn't frame this at all in the proper way to actually get them even thinking about
the purpose
of the last.
Yes.
Because it all links. So
I have that too. Yeah.
Lesson 4 is the reading from lesson 4 is going to link to lesson 5, and he didn't even ask any of those probing questions.
That's right.
And not only that, his directions and things, he's not very clear.
Yeah, that's why I said the rambling. But that would have been a good time to add that added support. I love looking over there like the anchor chart, because some of the wording, even with the code, they said the added support could have been you had an anchor chart and put vocabulary words, gave examples.
Yeah, picture. Yeah.
Like, we need to
let's add it to our vocab chart.
Added support.
I love that idea.
It would have been very effective if he also, with that check for understanding, how did the United States get the Louisiana Territory? That's very early on.
Yeah.
That
And
gets
this is
them.
heavy for first grade.
It's
So
and it's
you need a
so
lot of-
great.
yeah.
Like, but just like when we learn in the literacy RBs, vocabulary and building background is key when it comes to students understanding, comprehending, and so when we think about the exposure of Lewis and Clark and building background, kids probably come with very little knowledge around Lewis and Clark and building background around. Yeah. So that it's key to build that.
Do they have read alouds? Because I thought with the read alouds, when I taught you get the reader. I didn't
So
see the reader in their hands.
that's so the way it does. If you notice, like there's usually two reading components, like two readings.
Right.
One is the actual has the reader.
Yeah.
One is where they're supposed to listen
Okay.
and see the images.
Okay. Now we're going to move on. We have a list of like glows and grows, but we're going to now, and this seems a little backwards, we're going to norm on the walkthrough tool
Okay.
and then go
This
into,
one, though.
yeah.
Okay.
And then we're going to go into the action step guide and just like, thank you. Are you guys ready?
Yeah.
All right.
I
So,
wanna thank you though. I feel more confident
That's what I'm
because you
saying.
actually just really taught me how to look at a lesson.
I'm sorry, do
see
you want to
what the
say
le-
that more into the camera?
Yeah.
No.
I want to thank you, Kat, because we have a lot, and I told you that my
Oh.
mind has to piece things together and then break it
I
down.
know.
But you cleared up so much. Like I feel more confident now with having that tool because you showed me what I need to follow and what I need to see. So when we first looked at him without having a lesson,
Right.
we were on a little bit.
It was
but then we went
surfacey,
back,
wasn't
like,
it?
Oh, actually, he did follow that. So we would have kind of ripped them to pieces.
Well, so
without the lesson.
exactly. Like when I was telling this to Monique,
Mhm.
when I first came here this last time, my internet didn't work. I like hardly. I couldn't pick up the lessons. I was
Yeah.
going in blind. So my feedback and my notes were mainly like culture and things that I could see. I couldn't give feedback on the lesson because I didn't have it in front of me and I didn't know how they were
It's
internalizing.
very important now.
And
I
then
thank you.
day 2, when I came in, I had the lesson, like I pulled it up, but I still didn't do a deep dive in the lesson, but I could still see the changes that the 4th and 5th grade teachers made or didn't
Right.
do
Right.
just by quickly skimming. And my feedback was so much stronger.
Right.
But yeah, but it's not easy,
Yeah.
like when you're doing like 5 teachers at once, that's why I think it's okay to just pull up the lesson, quickly skim over, and then have it on the right side of your screen and on the left, your notes, so that you can kind of like you're listening for
Right.
as you're going.
So instead of praying, we have our one. Maybe we can put those in the dash. because
However
this
you
was
want.
good for me. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh,
it's
wait,
I
it's
know,
right
like-
there. Yeah.
That's what I was.
Yeah. Okay. So what? Obviously, get that in the camera. Okay. So we're gonna go through the walkthrough tool, and we're just gonna norm on what did yes. Would you mark partial? So let's start with the indicators. So let's look at the first indicator. What does it say?
The one is before classroom visit.
Evidence.
Yeah. What would
Oh,
we mark with
teaching.
those?
I don't.
They don't give you a maybe for the first part. It's just yes or no.
I don't feel like we were internalized.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I feel like he just kind of grabbed it and was. I don't feel internalized.
Okay.
Mm.
How do you feel?
Partial.
I mean, there's a
Does it
few. He
seem
probably
like he
read
knew,
it.
but I guess what is our standard of internalized?
Mm.
Like if we wanted internalized where they're following it script by script and adding these in, and I think you're right. If we really want to see the pausing points, and we're really wanting to see you ask the questions according to the last exit ticket, it
Yep.
would be no. It's heavy, but it's like
Okay. Okay. That's good. I think it's important to norm around these components.
right.
You guys have, and I think it's really important that you name during the protocol that we need to see the lesson in the annotated lesson in hand, because then that would show you that they internalized it. It might not be executed well, but we know they checked the pre-work off.
Mhm.
Okay, the second one, we're just going to say yes, until we don't. Let's just going to assume. The pacing guide too, we don't know. Okay, lesson meets minimum number of minutes for core instruction. We didn't see the full thing. We did zoom in on, we found an error of like him just kind of skipping through. But again, if we saw the annotations and maybe the objective, he should have zoomed in into what we saw. Yeah.
But when
Because
they're saying core minutes, or they're saying like if the whole lesson takes 60 minutes,
Yeah.
hit that.
Yeah,
He
like is
hit
he
that,
going
but did he
120
even-
minutes or is he just
Right.
taking 30? We don't know because we didn't see the full thing.
Okay.
But yeah. And this could be, it's rarely you put no, if teachers are doing their own thing and like there's no blocks established, there's
Right.
no structure. That's, I think, why they put some of these in here to make sure like, do we have enough time for teachers to actually go through a whole lesson?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do the during. Teachers have lesson materials ready and establish key component routines. Okay.
Yeah.
Lesson objectives are shared with students in an oral or written capacity. So let's no, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't.
Because he did more of the.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The lesson key components identified for use are present and implemented effectively to support learning throughout the lesson.
There's some parts that are okay.
Right.
Like
He focused in on what was it? The cold. What were we talking about?
Like, did he use the visuals?
yeah,
Like, because that would be
partial-
something like if we didn't see the visuals, to
Yeah.
me, is not utilizing the materials to support all students accessing. So that could be, but I
mean, he
he used the
slides,
visuals and he
yes.
referred to it.
implemented effectively as well.
Yeah.
Well, that's where we go back and forth is it something else? Did he use the materials effectively for its purpose, but then he missed parts and that could go to more something else.
Okay.
Yeah. All students are active participants in a lesson key component with time provided.
Not all. I mean, I did see some disengagement, some.
Think about how he asked questions.
Yeah, he did it in whole group.
It was whole group. How do you know?
Yeah.
When you think about, so I want you guys to, I'm going a little rogue, but that's okay. This is like something really good. Mr. Book, where's that?
Oh, you need. Okay.
I need your
'Cause
closet.
They walk away if you don't.
I know you got a cord in your backpack.
You want to put this to where you're on
Oh, no,
camera?
don't. Okay. So when you think, I want you to read, this is going to like rock your world, okay? Well, maybe it won't. And I'm just amping it up and then.
Well, there's the eraser. That's us from yesterday.
Okay.
We didn't erase what you wrote.
This is something I've done a PD on, but I want you to think about. This is, okay. This is called, like, when people say like rigor, cognitive lift, we're thinking about the students are doing the thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I want you to think about participation, and then I want you to think about thinking. Okay? So we're going to have, let's say, a 1 is going to be here. The numbers have no like meaning of like a 4 is less, or it's just to refer to. Okay, so participation and thinking. So as, let's say he asks a really strong question, but it's to 1 kid. Think about on the graph. What number would he be at for cognitive lift?
So 1 being low.
Right. If he,
I would say 2.
right. But it's low participation, but high thinking, right? Only 1 kid did the thinking for everybody else.
Right.
And I could have been checked out and thinking about Taylor Swift and whatever,
Yeah.
while someone else is like, what BB's doing the thinking for me, and I just am getting by.
Right.
Okay, But then let's say he asked a low thinking question, but he did a turn and talk.
Yeah.
What number would he be there?
So 1 being low.
Well, one doesn't have like a value to
Okay.
the numbers. It's just like what number would he be if it was a literal low, like a
Your participation is high, but your thinking is
Right,
low, but it's
yeah.
not much higher than your
right. So
Yeah.
he would be participation would be
Yeah,
high,
high.
right? But there's no thinking.
Yeah.
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 So I want you to think about when he kept asking questions. One time he used a turn and talk, and it was a high level question. It was one time that it was like all
Yeah.
kids were asked to engage.
And
But for the most part, when he asked questions,
Right.
where was he at? Like what number?
He was probably he was at high participation mostly, but low thinking.
Was he high
Yeah.
participation?
With the turn talk?
When you only asked one turn and talk question.
Right.
How else did he ask a question?
That was it.
But when he
What?
did ask questions outside of the turn and talk.
It was like whole group.
Right, but then
He called
Who
on a
answered?
couple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
he
maybe
just
2
called on
people.
yeah, or he answered for them,
Mhm.
or he called on one kid. So where would that be on the graph? Let's just pretend the questions he did ask aligned to the HQIM, they were high thinking.
I think low participation because
Right. What number would that be?
3.
Well, but if the
What?
questions are high,
Oh, okay. So that would be
So it
4.
would be 2.
2.
two,
Okay.
because he does the
Oh.
whole group,
I got you.
right? So for this teacher, if he's here, we want our teachers, when they're asking their CFUs, we want all kids doing the thinking, but we want the questions to be strong, right?
Right.
So if he's internalizing, he's going into the CFUs, let's say Mika, this teacher, which is very, very common, we see this all the time, constantly calling on one kid.
Right.
There's no facilitation of thinking.
Right.
It's just like, I know the answer,
Right.
and I'm going to call on the kid that always knows the answer. Everybody else check out.
Right.
What would we need him to do to become a 1 during those CFUs
I think
with
he's-
Brandon? What would we need him to do?
stack. So he's using the turn and talk, but he's overusing it, and I don't think he's using it with fidelity. I think when you do the turn and talk, now share.
So you're saying like
So
increase
stack your
turn and talks.
MRIs, just not the turn and talk. We're gonna do a turn and talk. We're gonna do a share out, think pair share.
So increase engagement
Right.
strategies.
And if you're thinking about internalizing,
Mm-hmm.
he needs to identify his questions
Right.
and have an exemplar with the
Right,
know
like
his
so,
route,
like okay,
right,
great.
right.
You identify. Let's say on his
He should be having an
lesson,
exemplar
okay,
in
great.
his
He
hand too.
highlighted the question,
Right.
but that's not what he needs.
That's not what he
He knows the questions to ask. Well, he missed a couple.
He did. He missed it.
He did. But when he's with Brandon, he needs to not only highlight the question, but what should he do with the question?
He should answer it. And
Well,
so
what
that's
do
the
we need him
exemplar.
to do to get to become a 1?
So he needs to determine what he's going to use as far as his engagement with the
Yes.
scholars,
Mhm.
and also on top of that, he needs to make sure that he has it thoroughly answered.
Right. Like what is
Yeah.
he going to
He
answer?
needs to
when?
have the misconceptions within his exemplar as well. What
Yeah,
the teacher, because they should be walking. So if we pick 4 to take your questions, they should have that as well because he's picking from that. So if the ultimate goal is to have 100%, master these questions, as he's asking those, he needs to say, okay, give me a little bit more. You know what I'm saying? So when he asks the question, he needs to have that healthy struggle
Right.
to
Well,
make
in order,
sure.
and well, yes, I totally agree with you. But
Yeah.
first, he needs to recognize that I need to get all kids
Involved.
to do the participation because I keep doing one kid
Yeah.
and it's low.
It's low.
But how am I going to do that? When I'm internalizing, I need to identify the questions and what engagement strategy. Is it going to be a turn and talk? Is it going to be a stop and jot?
I think
Then
it's stop
share
and
out.
jot.
Stop and
But he
jot.
also
share out.
needs, when he's doing when there's a reading, He needs to identify what parts of it he needs to stamp.
Yes,
Mhm.
and then where are the critical parts?
Yes.
And how am I going to get kids, how am I going to make sure that it's a 1 at
Yeah.
that point?
Mhm.
And so that's what I want you to think, like, because when you go into classrooms, reflect about ratio. Okay, I see when you're scanning the room, who's doing the thinking? Because kids are very good at pretending not to do anything, you know? Is it low thinking though? And all kids are doing it,
Mhm.
right? So like, and you'll see that in skills a little bit, like we saw yesterday, and that's okay because phonics at times it's not about, ratio with, but when we think about read alouds and opportunities, let's say they can't do a stop and jot because it's a read aloud. But in the upper grades, yeah, we can increase participation by doing a stop and jot, then a turn and talk. So I just wanted to make sure this really helps when it comes to if a teacher, let's say, are really high, constant turn and talks, but the questions are just low, right? Those are the teachers that like know you guys are pushing engagement. They walk in, they're like, turn and talk, to anything. Then with BB, what are the high level questions they need to ask?
Sure.
Because they're already here.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's the
gotta give
opposite.
them
They
yeah.
need to now, how are we going to ask those
That
questions?
makes perfect
So
sense.
ratio, this applies to math, a lot of math as well. You'll see the teacher doing the thinking for kids, ask the one child over and over the one kid. So when we think about that, that refers back to that indicator that we were just diving into about, where was it? All students are active participants in the lesson key components. And so from that, who really did the thinking there? Yeah, so we would say no. We could say partial. It depends, like however we want to norm around this one.
It's probably no.
It's
He
a
didn't
no.
involve many kids at all.
Right.
It was the 2 kids, and like I said, then he got caught up in using a lot of inferencing and everything, but it was more him.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you say all students,
No, and you could say partial because they were engaged. Like they were like excited about Lewis and
Yeah.
Clark, along the way. But we still don't know
If they left there, really.
participants in key components. I don't know. But so that could go either way of partial or no. Maintains alignment to lesson objective structure and pacing.
I don't think so.
Probably I would say a partial because he did go through all the components, but he just went too fast and he missed some of the CFUs.
Yeah.
Students are expected to use text evidence and academic vocabulary in responding to questions verbally and in writing.
I didn't hear much of that. Like I didn't hear verbally them like really using.
He amplified co.
He did
Yeah,
that.
but
But
then he answered everything.
Yeah, but like in talk, like when you hear them talking, you didn't hear.
He did
them.
not give them opportunities,
No,
which
that's the word. He didn't give
reminds
them.
me of like some of the things that you pulled out for here. And especially our MLLs, like they need to use their language,
Right.
which makes sense. If he's a 2, how are they? No one's expected to use any kind of language because no one's really asked to speak. Lesson students are assessed throughout the lesson in conjunction with the primary focus. So this is the CFU's part. Now, Mika, I heard you say you noticed he did one of the CFUs.
Okay, I'm sorry. I forgot
No.
about attention.
No.
Attention. I'm not paying attention.
Do you like how I'm like cold calling Mika?
No, I love it. I love it.
Students are assessed throughout the lesson in conjunction with the primary focus objective. Remember we talked about CFUs.
I don't think so. Throughout the lesson, it's certain words they're asking. They're asking throughout the lesson.
But remember the CFUs that we identified. Did he ask the CFUs? Did he check for understanding?
No, he asked a couple of comprehensive questions. He didn't ask all the CFUs. Do you remember him asking?
He didn't ask all of them.
And then even with the comprehensive questions, they give you 4 or 5. Should they try to get that 10 minutes to ask all of them if they're there, or do you? He asks 1, he asks number 2.
He should. Okay, so with this one, I would say no. We didn't see him check for
Yeah.
understand or intentionally check for
Right.
understanding. But to your question, Mika, that's when with BB, what is the objective? Like, what do we want students to walk away knowing and doing?
Okay.
That's where I.
What are the
Yeah.
questions that you need to ask? And then what are some of the literal questions that are your back pocket that if they don't get this, then refer to this question?
Mhm.
And they had, did you see the inferential and the literal, the two
So you
types?
have to hit them.
Yeah.
Right. And so he should knows Tamika's question, he doesn't need to ask all of them.
Mhm.
I would say he does need to ask the CFUs though.
Exactly.
But
I
pick
believe
pick the questions that are he wants to
that relates to those CFUs.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if they give you
Um,
5, and then they can
did
have that in hand.
Yep.
students receive in the moment feedback on their work? They didn't really get to, so I put NP, just not present, because we don't know yet. Like I wouldn't dock him because he didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was no artifact for him to give feedback.
Right.
Yesterday, we did see her giving feedback on kids
Mhm.
doing
Right.
the T, right? And so I would say yes, like she
Yeah.
did.
She did.
Very good.
Optional activities included the lesson are purposeful and supporting all students.
Not all students.
Right.
Optional activities. No, he didn't use the supported help. There was no anchor chart. There was things that could have pulled your IEP kids or your
Well, he
youth.
used the one embedded support, the co.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That was it. But the other components, no.
No.
Like the
Purposeful
list of
support.
words.
All
Remember
students
all of
agree.
the embedded supports we
Yeah.
saw?
Mhm.
So maybe a partial because we want to give him credit for the co. Like actually,
Yeah.
oh wow, he
Like
did
using
read that
that.
part. All right, let's go down. This is really important. This could be again for like embedding into your phase 3
Mhm.
because I notice it's not on your walkthrough
Yeah, it's
tool.
phase 3.
So instructional approaches and strategies outlined in the lesson are implemented effectively.
Partial.
Yeah, because he didn't do the CFUs. We didn't
Right.
see any kind of engagement strategies. Okay, when adjustments have been made, these adjustments are purposeful in supporting the needs.
That's what I didn't think.
No?
I
Okay.
think he made adjustment to go ahead and give an example, but he kept answering. He never gave that moment of let me give this to you. Let me do that slow release. Now you all.
Did you see? And then the next one is really like, did he make any changes to differentiate?
No. I
No,
said that in my
it was
notes.
whole
There
group.
no differentiating at all.
Teacher uses engagement strategies.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, the engagement far as the turn and talk.
And it was
kids love
one
the
turn and talk.
Yeah, he loves that TT.
So we can do once. It's really like a
Yeah.
popcorn, like one. Usually it was.
Yeah.
And then teacher uses engagement strategies. We can give them a partial. I would say no, just because we only saw one turn and talk. The rest of it was just like one kid
Right.
or him doing it.
Mhm.
Okay, embedded supports. We saw one,
Yeah.
but we didn't see. I was shocked that we saw that one.
I know.
With the
It is. We
code,
saw. I
and
was
he
like,
threw it in
okay.
there.
Yeah, and
He
you
got
know
it
what?
in
He
there.
is lucky he slipped that co in because we would be right.
No, that is
So we'll give him a
And he
partial.
threw it in there.
All right. So now I want you to do is I want you to think about though, like you guys already stamped this, but on the slide deck, just to make sure we stamp when leading HQIM, leaders and coaches must, I like this, look beyond the surface. And you just like set it up for that.
Mhm.
Like before we had the lesson, you kind of were giving feedback, but it was hard to see how he internalized.
Right.
Leaders and coaches should observe instruction alongside the lesson. We talked about that too.
Mhm.
And then how, like, getting a window into how they're internalizing, like what decisions they're making that they do with BB
Mhm.
is like, what is the evidence that we want to make sure that we see in every classroom?
Well, we really know what our meeting should be about. I mean,
Mhm.
she's given us like this is what we target that hour together.
Mhm.
And I like this too. I know we took a few out, but I almost just want to use all of this because you broke it down to where I think it's all needed for us to.
Well, so here's what Monique was naming too. It is I think there is some strength in like focusing on a few, like 4 to 6.
Mhm.
And that might be too much, like 3 to 4 indicators.
But
And
maybe
we
for
can,
us,
when
we can
Brittany
use
comes,
this.
we can like circle up, like, are there indicators on here that maybe we don't need to measure all the time for the month of October? And is there something missing that's, right here I had like one missing I noticed was all students are active participants. Like, that's something that I'd really want to measure,
Mhm.
because then I want to get that data. Like, again, are we just
Mhm.
always a 2 where it's like one kid doing this high level thinking?
I think like the way I approached it last year in a way, and like the way I kind of see it this year, like yeah, because I mean I'm gonna do some walkthroughs with you. Like whenever I'm in there, like I know which 5 or 6 that we are focused on, but while I'm taking my notes, I can still like identify other strengths or
Yeah.
weaknesses. But I just know like, hey,
Yeah.
that's something that's coming. But right now, I just want to make sure like I'm in this frame, but I
Right.
can still take a note or two and be like, oh
Yeah,
yeah,
'cause
well,
I
this is
think I'm
something
gonna
that we're
have
gonna
both.
work
That's
on.
right.
Exactly.
So that way, when we get to
Right.
phase 3,
That's
or even
right.
if it was a phase 1, you can be like, oh, this
Yes.
should be a quick fix because we already been through that. But
Yeah.
now, and then you can kind of start to get your data together for phase 3.
Well, and we need to think about the teachers that are new to the
Yeah.
curriculum and the teacher that has a year under her belt or 2 years.
Mhm.
There's a huge difference with what they're ready for. I love that. Okay, so now we're going to go to the action steps that we're going to assign for this teacher.
Okay.
So remember, these tools work together, right?
Mhm.
So now I want you to access the action step guide for Amplify.
What's the difference between this one and the 2.0?
You know what?
2.0. Are they
Pause the
same?
video. I have no idea. I will
Okay.
find out
Okay.
on my fake parking lot sticky note. I don't know that. I don't
Okay.
know. And I actually asked I asked that to myself, like, what changes? I should know that.
Okay.
I'm going to make a note that I'm going to 2.0 question mark.
Can we pause for like 2 minutes just so I use the restroom? I just drank all of this tea.
Of course we can. I'm gonna.
So when you do this action step coaching guide, you want to stick to one of the 3, right? Or do you pick like?
Yeah, like I would say, that's a great question. What do you guys think?
I mean, you don't want to overwhelm them with too much, right?
No, yeah, we want it. Yeah, no, you definitely stay centered in like what are the foundational components first, and
Okay.
then as they start to use embedded supports, what are the other ones that we could go towards? But yeah, one thing. So when we think about the video,
Mhm.
what is the highest leverage action step we can give that will maximize student engagement and outcomes? That's
So
what
that's right under the potential action steps.
yeah.
I think I have one that I would identify.
No, you're teaching just needs your list. I'm in the meeting. You can just text it to me. I know, just as soon as you can, just text me. Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye. Paisley.
So like just criteria for success with action steps. And we kind of talked about it yesterday.
Mhm.
It should be bite size, right? Like
Yeah.
he can implement this tomorrow or the next week. Sometimes you'll see it's like big theory, increase rigor. Like I can't, like, I don't know what to do with that. All right, kids aren't talking, but it's still not bite size enough. It's the highest leverage. So we made a list of a ton of grows, right? But really, like, when you think about a foundational part, we named a lot about his skipping of the CFUs.
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
And so, and then the other thing we want, so we want it bite size, we need it high leverage, and we need it to be actionable. Like, what can the teacher do, say, and think about? And then how? Break down the how the teacher will engage in this move. So it's not just CFUs, it's during lesson internalization, right? We got the how. We're giving them the how. Sometimes when we give feedback, we don't give them the how. It's just like we give them the gap, and it could be bite sized, but we
Yeah.
don't actually give them the like how to do it. And so that's really important as well.
Okay.
Okay. So what do we think? Based on the highest leverage. Go ahead.
I put under instructional delivery the lesson key components identified for use are present and implemented effectively to support learning throughout the lesson. The reason I put that is because we talked about that, but we also talked about like the engagement factor in the classroom. And I think if he actually would go into like with me, if I was his, if I'm sitting with him for lesson internalizations, I need him to be able to understand how to implement the CFUs,
Yep.
the questions effectively, so that way he can have more engagement and it can be effective engagement,
Okay.
higher thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I sit at that particular.
Say it one more time. The first part, the one that you just want to stamp the action.
Whenever he's with me for like lesson internalization, it's showing him how to effectively implement it.
Mm-hmm. What, even if you narrow it in, because in his mind, let's say he did go through all the components, right? So it's like, but what was he missing when he did this?
When he did this, like this with the questioning, just making sure that you're selecting the questions that align to the objective.
Yeah, and because he did ask some of the questions, because in his brain he's gonna be like, I did ask the questions, but what was he missing? What are like the big rocks that he was missing?
With the
What questions was he missing?
He was missing the higher order thinking questions, the important
The
questions.
CFUs,
The
yeah.
questions,
Yeah. To like check for
to check
understanding.
understanding to make sure your kids can identify the end goal. So yeah, that would be my big push for him. Because I think if he does that, when he does those engagement pieces, it'll be so much stronger.
Mika, what are your thoughts?
So am I picking from support teacher and the lesson internalization, or you just pick from that book? Because one that I see.
We could go to, so like if you think about supports all learners, that's about engagement strategy. But before we even, I wonder, go to engagement strategies, I would almost go to instructional delivery. So because then the next one is engagement strategies, that would be his next step. But we want to make sure that we see the components first.
We have to see those components.
So I think I wish this was kind of like the scope and sequence was changed a little. But if we go to instructional delivery, I think it's page 2. That's where we're really like the highest leverage in this page.
Yeah, because the CFUs are critical.
Like even when we think about, so students are assessed throughout the lesson in conjunction with the objective.
I like the lesson is paced deliberately throughout all components of the lesson.
Right. And so when we think about, so if we land on, if we land on, I'm going to have to I'm going to sit over there. I have to charge my computer. But if we land on if we want to see students receive in the moment feedback, he needs to identify the CFUs, right? Because then he can give feedback, or he can observe to see if our students. Right. So if you think about that, what would be a really good question for you to ask during this coaching?
Oh, so should I pick from the guiding questions?
Yeah. Is there anything that when we think about CFUs, he left those out? So our action step is we want to see him
So I could start
Prioritize.
with how are you planning pacing within the lesson? Just wanting to understand.
What-
Am
That's
I
yeah.
moving on?
No.
I'm picking from here.
Yeah, are you on the second page?
That's page 2.
Oh, you know what? Go to the
Is this the wrong one?
No, I'm looking at the 2.0.
Okay, let me go to the
No,
2.0.
but
No,
again,
maybe
it goes
the
back to the
2.0.
question of why, yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking that maybe more is on the 2.0.
Yeah, there is. Now that I just looked at yours.
Yeah, it breaks it down. Okay, so.
Did you find the 2.0?
Mhm.
Okay, good.
Okay, so let me
And
go
then
to
go
my
to the
focus
second
set.
page. That totally makes sense. Now you're like, what?
Yeah. Okay, that's page 3. Here's page 2. Here we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so guiding questions. Really focus on the pacing, so.
Well,
How
it
will
could,
you
but if we want
understand?
him to, because we need him to make sure that he's prioritizing the CFUs, and he's not. He just
Right.
skipped over it, right? So think about like,
So that's a perfect one. How will you check for understanding
yes,
during and after the lesson?
yes, and then exactly. So that could be a good. How do you normally check for understanding along the
Yeah.
way? You know, this is what you
Use
want
the
students to walk
CFUs.
away with.
Right.
But I didn't. Yeah, we could talk about like where opportunities in the lesson do you identify just to
Right.
like understand.
Mhm.
So, okay, perfect.
So so this makes sense. So on my O3s, when I have the one-on-ones with them, we'll go back over the walkthrough information that was sent to them. And then these are the questions. Okay, so these are some of the things
during your
that-
coaching
my
conversations,
conversation.
to get him to think about, you know, as a guiding question for him to kind of do the cognitive lift a
Right.
little bit. Let me just, oh my God, I'm covered in. Okay, I'm gonna move this.
Okay, yeah. About that, I think all of them. I still got about it.
All right, so just to tie this up, we want him to, just a recap, we want him to prioritize. If we were gonna say, remember, this is the what. What is the action that he needs to do? He needs to prioritize the CFUs. That's the what.
Yes.
And then how? What is the how that he will do that?
And then that's it on pace.
He'll do it. How he'll do it through his TPD time.
Yes, in his day.
Once a week,
Mhm.
right? And then
And then when I have the
that'll be
one-on-one,
your major point of like,
right.
that's what I'm
'Cause
looking
one of the
for.
questions we picked out
Okay.
is how
Yeah.
do you provide feedback? What do we think? Oh, how will you check for understanding during and after the lesson? What methods are you using? I noticed that.
Yeah, when you're
you
internalizing,
addressed 2 of them, but
yes, that's exactly right. Like I noticed that when you internalize or when you followed a lot of the lesson components,
Yeah.
however, like what does check for understanding look like with a lesson? How do you plan for that?